While the rest of Africa is asleep, Botswana is awake and making big moves. Botswana has a growth trajectory that can only be described as mooning. It's simply out of this world. The country has risen from the ashes of poverty and strife to become Africa's fastest growing economy, and the world is taking notice. Botswana is one of only a few African countries projected by the World Bank to become a high-income country by 2036. Botswana had the world's fastest economic growth rate between 1965 and 1995. Many commentators have been perplexed by Botswana's astonishing performance, given the country's prospects were bleak after independence in 1966. After all, Botswana is a landlocked country with a track record that is less than stellar. Botswana's progress was hampered not simply by geography. Human resources were in scarce supply in independent Botswana. The raw numbers paint a grimmer picture, stating that only 22 people in the country had completed secondary schooling and 100 had completed high school. Zambia had 10 times the number of secondary school graduates, while Uganda had 70 times the number. Furthermore, unlike other colonies, British investments in Botswana were minor, and the country only had 12 kilometers of road when the colonial authority left. Despite these challenges, Botswana has emerged as an African hope. However, examining Botswana's past demonstrates that the strength of its pre-colonial institutions may provide insight into the country's post-colonial success. Mechanisms devised by the Tswana tribe served as a bulwark against tyranny in pre-colonial Botswana. In comparison to other tribes, their pre-colonial structures attempted to limit leaders' authority. Even though they held the final say, chiefs were compelled to consult the Kegala, or traditional assembly, before making a decision. As a result, the Tswana culture nurtured dissent in comparison to those of other African ethnic groups. Furthermore, community and private property rights coexisted in pre-colonial Botswana. Unoccupied land, for example, which was plentiful, served a common function. Yet the chief reserved the ability to transfer it among tribe members for agricultural purposes. Private property rights established by customary law, on the other hand, allowed for the accumulation of personal items and animals. In short, the quality of pre-colonial institutions undoubtedly aided Botswana's progress by preventing officials from abusing their power. If the inclusive pre-colonial institutions effectively restrained elites, why did Botswana perform so poorly before independence? Asks Scott Bollier in his critique of the institutional thesis. Before independence, Botswana was the world's third poorest country. So, if institutions are so crucial, how come pre-colonial Botswana's economic progress was stunted? The issue is that we frequently overlook the small differences between political and economic systems. Economic institutions promote growth, whereas political institutions facilitate it. That is, political institutions can promote prosperity by removing barriers to private players and ensuring the peaceful accumulation of capital is protected from both private and government theft. To be effective, political institutions must prohibit the state from expropriating resources. Protecting private property, on the other hand, is not very beneficial in terms of growth if growth is non-existent due to the primitive structure of economic institutions. Pre-colonial economic institutions in Botswana remained basic, and Valentin Saylor captures the anti-growth aspect of institutions in pre-colonial Botswana. Pre-colonial Tswana trade was typical of a subsistence-based economy. Typically, surplus goods were traded in the markets. We do not know of any enterprise-oriented production for markets. The market exchange was governed by personal relations among men. Intertribal trade usually needed the presence of the trader before the goods of the receiving tribe could be exchanged. Relative prices had to be known by the market participants, which increased transaction costs. Economic institutions in pre-colonial Botswana were almost always inefficient. As a result, despite the fact that political institutions in pre-colonial Botswana were generally unproblematic, they have limited explanatory power due to the country's low productivity. As a result, in the post-colonial age, political institutions are a better predictor of growth. Botswana's agricultural and mining sectors grew during this time, and as the economy industrialized in the post-independence era, the comparatively benign nature of Botswana's historical political institutions became critical, as seen by the government's commitment to investors. Entrepreneurs had an incentive to invest because the risk of expropriation was low. The story's logic is that in the pre-colonial era, economic institutions failed to maximize the benefits of economic transactions, and as a result, political institutions were less effective at cultivating growth, despite the fact that their primary role is to enable growth by establishing a predictable economic environment. Although some researchers have inflated the importance of pre-colonial institutions, Botswana still maintains an institutional advantage. According to Julius Kilzat in 2008, unlike her African neighbors, Botswana's government tackled economic policy with caution. According to Kilzat, in Botswana, as in Mauritius, the ideology of the dominant party, the Botswana Democratic Party, was developmentalism. The BDP adopted a pragmatic economic ideology. In the face of limited savings for national development, the BDP invited foreign capital to invest in Botswana. More importantly, revenues from mineral wealth have not been stolen. They have been channeled to productive institutions, thanks to the developmentalism of both politicians and bureaucrats. In addition, the Botswana government ignored anti-white sentiments that swept the region in the 1970s. Botswana welcomed South African and Zimbabwean refugees who contributed significantly to the economy. Every African nation could have turned out like Botswana, writes Scott Bollier, but most freshly elected leaders picked reform routes that were not conducive to long-term growth. During Botswana's post-colonial transition, Khama, on the other hand, made sound policy decisions. Botswana has been on a growth path for more than 30 years thanks to Khama's sensible decision. Botswana's success teaches us that countries are not bound by history. Like Botswana, they can overcome colonialism's history and the curse of location with the correct institutional framework and policies. Living conditions have increased in Botswana, and poverty has dropped significantly. Between 2002 to 2003 and 2009 to 2010, the percentage of the population living on less than $1.9 per day dropped significantly, from 29.8% to 18.2%, then to 16.1% in 2015 and 2016. Rising agricultural revenues, including subsidies, and shifting demography are the reasons for the rapid decline in poverty. Progress in eliminating poverty has been matched by improvements in shared prosperity. Between 2009 to 2010 and 2015 to 2016, the growth rate of consumption per capita for the bottom 40% of the population was 0.42% per year, which was greater than the growth rate for the top 60%. Botswana, on the other hand, performed in the middle of the global shared prosperity distribution. Inequality has decreased as well, albeit it remains high. Inequality, as assessed by the Gini Index, declined from 60.5% to 53.3% between 2010 and 2015. Regional convergence as a result of high growth in rural regions and demographic shifts is one of the primary reasons contributing to Botswana's falling income disparity. Botswana, on the other hand, continues to be one of the world's most unequal countries. According to the latest Botswana multi-topic survey, Labor Force Module report, the unemployment rate has increased by 3.1 percentage points, from 17.6% to 20.7%, with youth unemployment posing a serious problem. To address these issues, it will be necessary to improve the quality of infrastructures such as water and power, as well as important basic services such as education, health, and social safety nets, as well as accelerate business environment changes and effective entrepreneurship assistance. Botswana receives a 0.42 on the World Bank's Human Capital Index. Given their important linkages to labor productivity and economic competitiveness, the Human Capital Index aims to increase focus and action on improving the level and quality of government investments in child health, nutrition, and education. According to Botswana's HCI score, a Botswana child born today will be just 42% as productive as she could have been if she had received a thorough education and good health. Education spending is among the greatest in the world, with nearly universal free primary education, but it has failed to produce a qualified workforce. Botswana is definitely one for the books when looking at the broader picture in terms of African development, and it's bound to get only better. With this form and track record, there is no doubt that Botswana will be leading the economic trend in Africa in a few years. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and also don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future updates on the New Tourist channel.